Hello, business building warrior. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We're going to talk through some of the tougher situations and questions that we've received over the past year. We're launching into 2025 as I'm recording this episode, and it's just a time of reflection, looking back at what happened in 2024, processing it, and we don't want to cover up any of the bad news, tough news, difficult conversations around here. We have those transparent conversations every day in our Facebook group, by the way. We talk about the rougher side, the challenges that people are facing in their Amazon, Walmart, e-commerce businesses, and there's always solutions. We have found that over the years. But one of the tough questions I want to tackle is what is it that we see from time to time? What is it that compels some long-term sellers to get out of the game? Meaning it was working for a while, it was going great, and then they decide for whatever reason to get out because things just aren't as great anymore. And are there some compelling reasons there that we should consider as we're ramping up? Are there some lessons we could learn? How do we avoid those scenarios where we step away from e-commerce, get frustrated, burn out, tired of Amazon, etc.? You could write the list, right? You've seen the challenges perhaps. And I would argue that in any business, it's exactly the same way. There's nothing magical about e-commerce where the rules of business don't apply, meaning it's always going to be as beautiful. If it works today, it's always going to work. No, every business has to adapt and change and grow. But let's start there, perhaps. Before I dive into some of the things that we've heard from some of the very experienced sellers who have walked away from Amazon for whatever reason, some of them very good stories. They sold their business for a lot of money, perhaps, or another big opportunity came along. But in some cases, it's uh, they just got either burnt out or they couldn't make it work the way it used to, and they stepped away to do something else. But let's take an honest look at the landscape of opportunity through the lens of big trends in the industry. No other economic segment is slated to grow anywhere near as much as e-commerce is in the United States, especially over the next decade. Transportation, um, hotel, travel, you look at all these different segments, medical, all the different economic segments, sectors, I should say, in the economy. Nothing is set to grow anywhere near as much as is e-commerce. It's inarguable. You can look these stats up yourself. Okay, so now that we know that, who stands to benefit from that growth? What companies stand to benefit from that ridiculous, insane growth? Amazon's at the top of the list. Obviously, they are half of every transaction online any given day in the United States. Nearly half of all business done online any given day is Amazon. eBay, Walmart, all the Shopify stores, the next 10 competitors combined all add up to less than what Amazon does every single day. So the big boy in the room is Amazon. So is there room for you to have opportunity there? Well, more millionaires have been created on Amazon than any other platform. They continue to be. We continue to see incredible success stories in our Facebook group. Everything from new sellers who just started a few weeks ago or a few months ago to people who've been around for several years who are hitting new highs and hitting new exciting new numbers. So there's no sign if anyone's seriously taking a look at the data and the facts, and I could give you a whole load more facts, data, and evidence than what I just did. There's no indications that say, yeah, the opportunities, it's fading away. No, customers are shopping more. The growth is slated to continue to climb. Retail in the United States is still over 80% not online. Over 80% of retail spending is still done traditional brick and mortar, get in the car, go to a store. Over 80%. It's not going to be that way very long, though. The future is very bright for e-commerce. It's going to blow past 20%, 25, 30% soon. Those are all things that are going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. The growth is astounding. So the question you might ask yourself at this point before we get to our difficult questions is, well, if the opportunity is expanding so rapidly, is there any room for me? Is there any room for the little guy to step in? That's the hard question that our team has asked ourselves every day for about 20 years. What is the lowest hanging fruit opportunity where you can go with the lowest amount of investment possible, the shortest possible learning curve, and the greatest odds of building a very successful, sustainable business that you can be proud of that leads to multiple other opportunities. Hands down, no question, there's only one answer. The first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh place winner of that question is helping fill the underserved shelf space at Amazon's hundreds of US warehouses. It's such an expansive opportunity that's going to continue to grow at an incredible rate. There's over a billion ASINs on Amazon. As I'm recording this, it would take us 32 years just to look at each of them for 1 second each. And nearly half of them are ASINs that resellers are eligible to sell against. And a whole bunch, millions and millions of them at any given time, are underserved, meaning there's not enough inventory in Amazon's hundreds of warehouses to serve all the people who would like to be able to get their hands on those items quickly. And they're willing to pay a lot more than buy box, by the way, for those items. We prove that model all day, every day around here. Yet there's still a lot of skepticism out there, and there's still very experienced sellers who end up stepping away from Amazon. So when we look at this in our community, for example, I would estimate there were, let's say, 10 to 15 well-known, well-recognized long-term sellers in our community that for whatever reason, either a great reason, like I said, they sold their company, moved on to a better opportunity, or something happened and there's a lesson there that we could all learn from, I would propose. And we can prevent our business from going down that same path to where they stepped away and it was a frustrating thing for them. How do we take those lessons from the long-term experienced sellers who have stepped away? And just so you know, we talk about somewhere between 10 and 20 sellers, let's say, that I'm aware of, that long-term, serious, very profitable sellers who have now stepped away doing something else. How do we contrast that number with the number of people who are still doing it and still loving it and still succeeding? Well, I would say it's less than 5%, far less than 5% of the long-term serious sellers that I'm aware of have made that decision to step away. But still, there's some very valuable lessons we can learn from those who do. What happened? Was it a mistake they made? Was it Amazon's changes? Was it something else? Let's take a good look at that from my perspective, some of the things that I've heard and seen. Now, here's some of the things that have caused people to step away. And some of these, I would say it was the user's fault. It was the seller's fault. I've seen some people launch businesses, for example, try to grow a big business drop shipping, meaning they're listing thousands of items at any given time that they don't have in their own possession, but they're tapped into some other catalog or source. And when something sells, they tell the drop shipper to ship that item for them to the Amazon customer. It's not sitting in Amazon's warehouse, it's sitting in someone else's warehouse. Those models consistently might scale and look good for a few months and then they crash and burn tragically. Amazon freezes the funds. It does not go well. That is one of the craziest ways that you can launch your Amazon business. Please don't do that. We don't teach it here. It's just an unstable foundation. So we've seen a lot of, most of, I would argue, nearly all the drop shippers have crashed and burned and gone away. A lot of new private label sellers wind up doing the same thing. Actually, the vast majority, almost all of them, wind up putting in tens of thousands of dollars and never actually having anything to show for it. So the people who have started off as new sellers, tried to launch their own brand on Amazon, create new listings, take pictures, set it up, build the bullet points, try to drive traffic, go through some $3,000 to $5,000 course. A lot of them, they'll pour the money in and they'll start to get some momentum, but then they do the math and they say, man, I'm losing $3 every sale. I can't sustain this. So they crank through some big numbers, but ultimately they turn the whole thing off. Because if they do start to stick their head out above the weeds, here comes a competitor right alongside them selling the same item basically for half the price. It's a rough game to launch a private label item. Now, we're making some serious progress in that arena. We're as good at this as anyone, but we do not encourage new sellers, especially, to go down that road. And we've seen a lot of people who did come into our community after they tried and they're frustrated because they've got a garage full of items they can't sell and they've spent $30,000 more than they were hoping to trying to make this thing happen. So they've dug a hole financially, they got product they can't sell, and now they're asking for help. because they went down a wrong road. Well, there's other roads that make a little more sense initially until you look at them through the lens of diversification versus going all in on just one strategy. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. Over 20 years ago, I made the observation in my best-selling book, Silent Sales Machine. It sold over 1 million copies. And one of the core themes of that book is this, and it continues to be. We've updated this book 11 times, and I still have this core theme included in every update. By the way, if you want a free copy of that book, go to silentjim.com/free11. See for yourself. I talk about it in every issue every version of this book, we've talked about this. And here's the concept. If we're going to use the internet to build beautiful businesses, we've got to come to grips with the reality that we're building a castle in someone else's playground, meaning Facebook, eBay, PayPal, Amazon, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, these big platforms that dominate, all the big apps that everybody has on their phone. If you're going to build a business on one of those platforms, you have to come to terms with the fact that when you signed up for an account, somewhere on page 40 of the terms of services you didn't read, it says something along the lines of, if we wake up one day and decide we don't like you, we can hit a button and delete you and pretend you never existed and you have no recourse. You signed that agreement just by downloading the app at some point. Some version of that statement is in their terms of service. That doesn't leave you holding a whole lot of cards ultimately. So how do you fight back against that? Well, in my book, I propose the way you fight back against that is you launch income streams, you put good systems in place to automate those income streams, and then you diversify your income streams. So you're always adding new streams, always adding new systems. You're managing systems that produce income, and you're going on multiple platforms. You see and hear us talk about this all the time in our community. Once your Amazon business is up and successful, you've had your first 10, 20, $30,000 a month, you're rolling, you've got the momentum. It's the same logic we would use if you had a really good job that you really liked. You love your boss, you love your job, great salary. That's a great time to be looking for another job. Not when you just got fired and now you're desperate. That's a rough time to look for another job. And you're not going to take both jobs, obviously, if you have a traditional career. You can't work two full-time jobs. But with the internet, you can have multiple great streams of income. That's the whole point. If you're going to play in the sandboxes that are built by others and build your castle in the sandboxes that belong to someone else, you might as well go around to multiple sandboxes as you're building those castles. If one gets wiped out, you got a backup plan. That's multiple streams of income. And not only is it very possible, it's become a very normal, very standard practice. I was talking about this 20 years ago. The idea of the gig economy where people kind of, they do Uber, do some deliveries, sell a little bit on eBay, and on the weekends they do, a job over here. That was unheard of over 20 years ago. It's become the norm now. You need to adapt that kind of mentality to the way you structure your business. So the people who have gotten burnt out and left Amazon frustrated, and now they're having to say, I don't know what I'm going to do next, are the people who made some of the mistakes that are common to people who ignore that advice. They built very robust, large operations that if Amazon decided they didn't like them suddenly for whatever reason, it wiped out enough of their income and created enough of a heartache for them that it really challenged their ability to continue in business. We've never proposed that anyone should go all in on only Amazon and focus only there forever, especially not with some of the more dangerous business models, such as the ones I've already mentioned, and any other model for that matter. We love to see Amazon sellers at that 10, 20, $30,000 a month mark, for example, open a Walmart account. Even if you're not rolling yet with your Amazon business, which is where you definitely should start, you need to have a Walmart account. The number of even podcast episodes where we've had interviews with guests who have said, yeah, my Amazon business was going great, but I had a couple ASINs that I bought too much of, and Amazon shut down that ASIN for whatever reason. I'm looking at this pile of 30 items, and I thought, all right, let's just see what'll happen on Walmart. So they send it in, and they sell for way more money and better margin on Walmart.com than they ever would have on Amazon. And that gets the ball rolling. And next thing you know, this person has a big Amazon and a big Walmart presence. And they may even start to like Walmart a little better than Amazon. We don't want you to start with Walmart. The customer base there is far smaller. You're far less likely to get some serious momentum starting there. We want you to start on Amazon because that's where all the action and all the activity, nearly half of all transactions online any given day are happening there with millions of underserved shelf space. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. The proof of that millions of underserved shelf space, millions of ASINs, hundreds of warehouses. They need more inventory on a lot of them. We've talked about that in the past, but let's stay focused for the things that derail the most established sellers, let's say. One of the things you'll hear is burnout. I just got tired of dealing with the requests from Amazon for a receipt or an invoice, an IP complaint, the, monitoring the interactions with Amazon. They lost some inventory and it took them 3 weeks to even respond to me to request reimbursement, those kind of things. To me, those are system and automation challenges, though. If you're the owner of a business that's of a substantial size and you're still the one doing those things in your business, there's a breakdown somewhere. You shouldn't be the one doing those things. You need to have systems in place. That's why I'm so excited that the system is what we call it around here. That's my good friend Kang of 3P Mercury. He's been interviewed on this episode several times. Actually, one of my favorite all-time episodes is number 754 of this podcast. Go listen to it if you haven't yet. That is a compelling interview with my good friend Kang. Not only has he built great software, but he's just a great human who's been through so many incredible challenges. He loves serving this community. He sees it as serving God with his whole heart. And you'll hear that in that interview. But he built software that completely automates the workflow of your business. So when you get those IP complaints, it's a couple keystrokes to respond to Amazon and give them exactly what they need. And instead of digging through shoeboxes and spreadsheets and databases and calling your shopper and saying, hey, did you save that receipt? I don't think I ever got it. Like if you've got a tedious process to track down the documentation that Amazon needs, yeah, you're going to get burnout. If you don't have good processes and systems in place, those kind of things will bury you over time. For reimbursements, we've completely automated that. We have someone else in charge of that. We use a service called Gatita. You can check them out at silentjimdotcom/reimburse. All one word, silentjimdotcom/reimburse. They have a great offer for our community. It's free. It's a free service. They keep a percentage of anything they recover. So when Amazon loses inventory or when Amazon owes you money, they're tracking all that down. We just count it as part of the expected loss, very much like if we had a convenience store. I don't know what the average is, but you can expect 5% shoplifting losses. You're going to get some of that back. You're going to catch some of the shoplifters, but you're not going to catch them all. Some of it's going to slip through the cracks. You got to build that in to the cost of doing business. Same thing with dealing with Amazon. There's a cost associated with sometimes they're going to lose inventory, that sort of thing. If that's frustrating, hey, do merchant fulfilled. Do all your own shipment. That's getting popular. There's plenty of prep centers, for example, that will receive your inventory and ship for you as your sales come in. That's a great way to do it too if you're getting frustrated with Amazon. There's always a way to pivot on any of these things. We love FBA. Kang uses FBA in the system. You can use it for merchant fulfill as well if you'd like. But the point is, there's plenty of people who are still doing extremely well at very high levels with the systems we teach around here. And just because some people got frustrated doesn't mean there's some kind of big negative shift. For 20 years, literally for 20 years, several times per year, I've heard from detractors, people who are frustrated for whatever reason, it's just not the same as it used to be. I've heard that so many times. At this point, literally 100 times have I heard a wave of discontent with it used to just be eBay, then it was eBay and Amazon, now it's eBay, Amazon, and Walmart. It's just not the way it used to be. Well, one of the rules of building a business online, I've given you one rule already. You're playing in someone else's sandbox, so build multiple castles in multiple sandboxes. The other rule is whatever's working today, whatever is just smooth as butter today, It's going to be different 6 months from now. It's going to be very different a year from now. That's why you don't go super deep into just one strategy. You got to stay nimble. You got to stay flexible. You've got to say, what lessons have we learned? How can I continue to monetize those things that we now understand that we didn't understand before? And I'll give you some examples of that in just a moment. But let's continue through some of the difficult scenarios that we've heard, some of the reasons that experienced sellers dropped off. So I've told you they just get frustrated. They get tired of dealing with like the lost inventory or the receipts. And Amazon always asks, accusing my inventory of being non-authentic. I get so sick and tired of having to defend my inventory. Just send them the receipts and invoices they requested, and you move on with your life, and everything's fine very shortly thereafter. But if it takes you 3 weeks to track those down, yeah, that is frustrating. If you're using something like the system, silentjimdotcom/the system, that's the 3P Mercury tool. It's a couple keystrokes to compile the information Amazon needs when there's an IP or an authentic inventory request. You can use jeffschick.com. Have them help with your legal challenges. Jeff Schick, SCHICK.com. Tell him we sent you, his team. You can be put on retainer for a few dollars a month. Anytime Amazon contacts you about anything health or an IP challenge or anything like that, have them intervene, have them tell you what needs to happen. Make it their problem, not yours, by putting them on retainer, and they'll handle all of that for you. So you can automate and systemize many of these pain points. Pardon me. Something else we saw is people who go all in on just one strategy or just one provider. We see this, for example, when people go all in on, say, Nike or all in on just Lego or some other big brand. Any big brand that might have a TV commercial, run on prime time. If that is your bread and butter, you're on pretty thin ice. It might be great for 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 5 years. But at some point, that brand could decide to gate, say, 30% of the sellers, and Amazon cooperates with them. We see this every Q4, every December. The selling community pretends to be shocked that Amazon does the exact same thing this year that they've done every other fourth quarter for the past decade plus. And that is they lock down some of the biggest brands, not for all sellers, but for a lot of sellers. Meaning Amazon may be okay with you selling Lego 9 months of the year, but the final 3 months of the year, they're not okay with you selling Lego. And if your entire business is built on selling Lego toys, you're going to be very frustrated with Amazon when they pull that plug. So we see a handful of people get upset for that reason. They went all in on one brand and they make that their bread and butter. And they think they're going to ride this gravy train into the sunset. And then Amazon, for whatever reason, or the brand, and from time to time, we'll see brands do this. It's not a trend, though, by the way. Those who are saying, yeah, the big brands are shutting out the resellers. No, that's just not the case. A handful of brands temporarily will do that from time to time. Typically, they all come back later. Nike's done that. They've done it a couple times. Famously, the first time they did it, everyone thought this is the end. No one will ever be able to sell Nike or any other major shoe brand. It's over, game over. Well, that agreement lasted a few months, and then Nike and Amazon were both begging resellers to come back and begin offering Nike shoes on their platform again. Because, do you understand why? Because Amazon makes a whole lot more money when there's multiple resellers. Nike makes a whole lot more money when there's multiple resellers. The customers are a whole lot happier because there's a lot more inventory in the brands and the ASINs, the designs that customers want. Nike's not good at that. Amazon's not good at it. Who is good at filling the underserved dark corners of the Amazon warehouse? That's us, the resellers. We're really good at it. So the whole machine runs better when brands let resellers sell. Now, the resistance to that is when brands say, well, we want to keep control over our brand. We want to keep control over the customer experience. That's the tug of war that we see. But it's a tug of war that goes back and forth and it will never end. And there will always be new brands opening. There will always be big brands reopening. There will always be big brands temporarily closing. That's part of the game. So if you meet someone who's frustrated because, yeah, I used to sell Adidas and now I can't sell Adidas. Amazon is terrible and evil. That's because you put all your eggs in one little basket. That is not how you play the e-commerce game. It's just not. So you've got to be diversified. How else do we see people going all in on just one strategy? We saw a lot of people kind of play fast and loose with the bundle rules, which are always changing and Amazon's always cranking down. The thing you have to understand about bundles on Amazon, this is my perspective, is Amazon's going to do what's best for the shoppers and for Amazon. They want a nice, clean catalog. They don't want a catalog where someone looks up Cheetos and they see 800 options, like they're looking at eBay suddenly. And this 32-ounce bag of Cheetos has a refrigerator magnet. And this 32-ounce bag of Cheetos has a little Matchbox car. And this 32-ounce bag of Cheetos has a little bottle opener. And suddenly their catalog looks like eBay. They don't want to look like eBay, obviously. So if the strategy you're deploying in trying to build bundles on Amazon makes Amazon's catalog look like eBay, where if you want an item, you're gonna have to scroll through 800 listings to find the one that suits you, and they're all just a little bit different, different picture, slightly different offer, throwing a little bonus pack of bubble gum with this one. Amazon doesn't want that. They want everyone selling that single bag of Cheetos to be on the same listing. They just want a nice, clean catalog that way. The good news is, for those of us who understand supply and demand on Amazon, who understand Amazon has hundreds of warehouses, even on the most popular items, you have an opportunity to be one of the highest priced, if not the highest priced seller and still get sales. As evidenced by one of my favorite recent examples is our student who sold 2,400 units of a very easily sourced item. He was on an ASIN with 200 other sellers, but he sold those 2,400 units as the highest price seller. Of all 200 sellers, he was the highest price and he sold 2,400 units. Why would shoppers ever pay more than they have to? There's only one reason. They're going to get it faster. And he knew that by being in the warehouses, FBA, he was giving a lot of shoppers on this very popular product the opportunity to get it within 2 to 4 hours, as opposed to waiting 2 to 3 days. So he made a ton of sales at a price almost triple buy box, and he sold a ton. So once you understand that it's not a matter of finding profitable items, it's a matter of serving the underserved shelf space, you start to move away from some of these ideas of having to go all in at a discount and hope this one single strategy works out. We love to see you diversify on Amazon. Don't go all in on bundles. Don't go all in on clogging up the catalog. Don't go all in walking a gray line of some policy. You've got to diversify. So some of the other things that we've seen frustrate sellers is they build an entire team and a huge operation out of something, say, like scanning barcodes and looking for sales and discounts. Man, that is a rough business model. You're serving such a tiny, tiny, slim, thin piece of the Amazon selling opportunity and marketplace. You have to scan 100, 150 items looking for something that's at a low enough price that you can flip it for a profit and you build a whole team to scan at scale. I've seen some very frustrated sellers blame Amazon for all kinds of craziness because that's their model. We don't teach that model here. We discourage that model. As a matter of fact, I've been saying for several years now, if you're scanning barcodes, you're doing it wrong. If you're out there looking for sales and discounts, you're doing it wrong. Now, we've had some examples of sellers on our program. One guy in particular stands out who he gets pricing advantages, which I love to have a price advantage. What seller doesn't? You don't need it to win on Amazon. That's important. But if you can get it, that's great. So what he does is he only sources local. Unless his supplier is within reasonable driving distance of his central location, he doesn't source anything. He buys it in bulk at a reduced price because he's finding wholesalers and distributors who live near him. So it's only shipping one time. It doesn't have to ship to his house or his warehouse and then ship to Amazon. It's going straight from these wholesalers that he's built a relationship with straight to Amazon. They even label it for him in some cases. That's a relationship strategy. That is going super wide in your relationships, in your strategy. He's got multiple wholesalers. This is a multiple seven-figure seller who's doing very, very well. You can scroll back through podcast episodes and hear examples of people with very creative solutions to some of these challenges that we're talking about today. So I've given you several examples of things that I've seen frustrate some really good people. These are people I love, trust, and respect, and they're going to rebound and do other great things, hopefully as part of the Amazon and reselling community and as the e-commerce community, but they may do something else instead. But these people exist, the people who do well for a while and then they're not doing so good and they step away and do something else. One of the big mistakes we see made as well that it's one of the more confusing ones to me. It's when people act surprised that other people are selling the same thing they are when you're a reseller. If your business model is built around keeping the list of things you sell secret from other sellers, that's not possible. Everything you sell as a reseller on Amazon is something that other people can sell, and they can probably eventually, ultimately, buy it in bulk at a better price. That's rule number one, possibly, of being a reseller on Amazon is how do you overcome that challenge? And there's multiple ways to do so. And we illustrate all the time around here. I gave 200 examples from my own Amazon account where I completely ignore the buy box and I'm making consistent profitable sales. Once you know how to find the underserved shelf space, instead of looking for the discounted products that you can flip profitably, you've got to understand the difference between those two. But once you begin to help fill the underserved shelf space, you're not as worried and consumed about price anymore. Remember that example I just gave you about our student who was selling alongside 200 other sellers and he was the highest price? He sold 2,400 units in just a few weeks. Do you think he would care if another 5 or 10 sellers jumped on that ASIN? If someone discovered that he was selling this item and jumped on that product? No, he doesn't care. He's jumping on fast moving products that are underserved to the extent where a good number of other sellers could jump on and it's still underserved. That's the definition of underserved. If it begins to tank the price and sales stop, well, don't go in so deep that that impacts you. You sell what remaining inventory you have, you put that ASIN on a wait list, you check back on it short time later and see if it's rebounded. That's the beauty of another part of the beauty of the system that Kang built. silentjimdotcom/the system. That's where you can go to hear more about it. It automates the process of keeping an eye on those ASINs that have dropped. So when they rebound, you can ride the swing back up. Kang's whole business, his whole $3 million business is built on that premise. He doesn't do a whole lot of above buy box selling, by the way. He doesn't use that strategy at all. He just rides the wave up, stops when it starts to drop again, waits for it to start riding up again. He doesn't care who finds his inventory. So for those sellers who have the concerns about other sellers seeing what they're selling, that should be a non-concern if you truly understand what it means to be a reseller on Amazon. And I've seen some sellers step away because they got frustrated that someone else started selling some of the same items that they sell. The other big argument against that for me is nobody can possibly know if they look at my entire inventory list, which ones are profitable, which ones aren't, where I'm sourcing them from, what my prices are, how much inventory I have or plan to buy for each of those ASINs. Seeing my catalog is useless. There's going to be at any given time 20% of my catalog that I'm trying to get rid of. And if you go in deep on those products thinking, oh, that's a winner, Jim's selling it, must be great. No, I've been trying to get out of that thing for 3 months. And I'm down to my last few units. And I'm selling at a slight loss. And you jump on it thinking it's a big winner. So just because you know what someone else is selling does not mean you know what their big winners are. Your business is secret in that regard. So the sellers who are frustrated, resellers who are frustrated by other sellers seeing what they sell, it just doesn't make sense to me. It never has. I think you never quite had the proper lens to look through at the Amazon selling opportunity. If this very public information surprisingly becomes public at some point, it doesn't make sense to me that that should be a surprise or a shock or should send a shockwave through your business. It just shouldn't happen that way if you truly understand what it is you're trying to do. You should always be finding more ASINs anyway, always be testing new ASINs, always be building relationships with suppliers that give you a unique advantage. The maturing process of being an e-commerce seller involves adding new relationships, new connections, new sources, new strategies over time. A good example of that would be a seller who is having success on an ASIN. Along comes a bunch of other people. They hop on this brand. It gets a little chaotic. I can tell you who's as frustrated as you are in that scenario, the brand. Reach out to the brand, build a relationship with that brand. Say, hey, I would like to represent you on Amazon. Let me help you set up your own account. Let's get you brand registered. Let's help you get control over these listings, get some price consistency so that your retail partners aren't frustrated at the prices that your product is selling for on Amazon. You can solve a lot of problems for these brands. That's the PPP model. We have a name for it. It's the proven product partnering. It's when you help brands get on Amazon and that brand is then managed by you. We have sellers in our community who transitioned from selling on Amazon and they went all in just doing PPP, meaning they're helping brands manage their presence on Amazon. It's a beautiful model. You can transition some of those frustrating ASINs into that model by having conversations, reaching out to those brands, talking to them. You'll be shocked at how warmly they will welcome you if you offer to solve their Amazon challenges. I would estimate 90 to 95% of all brands are frustrated to one degree or another, some of them very frustrated with Amazon, and you can help solve a lot of those challenges and get paid well to do it. Now you've got a diversified income because you're getting paid from more than one Amazon seller account, perhaps, right? Or you've got an exclusive arrangement with a brand. There's other strategies that should be considered when it comes to diversifying. One of the courses we've got coming out early 2025 is discontinued items. If you aren't yet sourcing discontinued items, you should look into it. It's a really fun way to get your hands on inventory that there's just no chance that you're not going to make a killing on once you know how to research it. So you can go in deeper. You can put $5,000 or $10,000 into just one ASIN, knowing that you're going to do really well and sell it out. Once it's gone, but you're going to make a lot of money because you're buying stuff that's about to vanish from shelves and you get a bunch of it. And you know it's a good moving ASIN and you hold it for a few weeks, a couple months at the most, and then you flip it all onto Amazon and you're one of the only sellers or the only seller at that point. And there's any given day, there's so many ASINs that are getting hard to find and shoppers are willing to pay so much more for. So that's just another way to diversify. So you can see if you go all in on just scanning barcodes, or you go all in on just building these questionable bundles, or you go all in on just Nike or just Adidas, yeah, you're going to hear some frustrating stories from those people eventually. It's going to happen eventually. Or someone who never built a nice workflow system, meaning every time Amazon reaches out and says, we need to see the receipts for this ASIN for the past, 6 months. You're thinking, oh man, I've bought that thing 50 times. It's going to take me a whole day to dig up those receipts. Amazon's so frustrating. Well, you don't have a good workflow system. Again, if you had the system, 3P Mercury, silentjimdotcom/the system, finding all the receipts for that ASIN is a couple keystrokes. Boom, you've got a PDF that shows all of them. You highlight the good parts that Amazon needs to see, you send it. 3 minutes later, you're back to work. So if you haven't built a good workflow system to handle some of these, what some people call these little paper cuts that Amazon's always throwing your way, there's software and systems that can help you overcome those. So if you don't have those things, yeah, it's going to be frustrating. But here's the bottom line. From my vantage point, keep in mind, I've been coaching e-commerce for over 2 decades. We've seen tens of thousands of people come through our community. We've had somewhere around 200 to 250 coaches come through. Sometimes they move on to other opportunities. They're with us for a short period of time. They get a job offer, something else happens, another season of life comes their way, Currently, we have about 60 coaches or so on our team. But those really good people, even them, sometimes they move on. Sometimes you just move on to something else. But the big picture is we're seeing so many more people succeed in this business arena than anything else out there that we've ever seen. We have many people on our team. Take Brian and Robin Joy, for example. You hear them on our podcast once a week or so. They've tried multiple business models. Nothing like this have they ever seen. I've had real estate guys come on our show and say the returns that you can get running your own Amazon business are off the charts compared to anything I've ever seen. We've had chiropractors, professionals. We've had people from medical professions. We've had firefighters. We've had people, teachers, former teachers. We have people who just bounce from job to job and never get out of high school. Everything in between say they've never seen anything like this. Yes, it's work. Yes, there will be frustrations. Yes, you will occasionally hear of some really good people who've been doing it a while who say, you know what, I'm kind of done. That happens. But the fact remains that this is an exploding, emerging segment, the biggest, slated to grow faster and bigger than any other segment of our economy in the next 5 to 10 years. So the growth is there. There's one platform that's clearly the place where you should be because that's where all the eyeballs are and all the underserved shelf space and those hundreds of warehouses, which I'll talk more about that in a moment, like I promised you. So you got that going for you. We've seen more millionaires created from this company than any other. I'm talking about small business owner millionaires. More people have come through Amazon and become small business millionaires than any other company. Challenge me on that if you'd like, but I don't think anything else has ever come close to the number of people who have built thriving, beautiful businesses based on a single platform. So all those factors are churning in that direction. Then you've got our Facebook group with over 2,000 success posts. As I'm recording this in the past week, we've seen 15 first time posts from people who are making their first sales, having their first $1,000 week, having their first $50,000 month, that sort of thing, popping up like constantly in that group, along with the challenges we help each other solve and that sort of thing, right? So there's plenty of momentum, there's plenty of growth opportunity. Don't let the negativity get you down. And if you aren't diversified and you've been doing this a while, this is Jim waving a little flag saying, hey, it's time to go job hunting. I know you like your job. I know it's working well. I know you're making some money, but now's the time to search for another job, not when you're desperate and Amazon slams the door on you for a couple months as you go through some big audit process, for example. And you're like, oh no, I've got 3 warehouses and 50 employees and I scan barcodes and that's my only business model. And now Amazon has shut me down for a month. What am I going to do? You need to be diversified. You should be on Walmart. You should have other strategies. You should have some consulting on the side. You could maybe have a prep center that you're running. I've seen plenty of people diversify by opening up a prep center and managing a few maybe international students who need someone local to manage their inventory. Hey, you've got your garage set up for it already anyway. You could throw a couple other seller stuff through the system and get paid well to do it. There's all kinds of ways to diversify. So don't go so all in on one strategy. We call it going inch wide, mile deep. If you do that as a business strategy online, you're really taking some significant risks. We'd rather see you go a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning you're committed just a little bit on a whole bunch of different ASINs, a whole bunch of different strategies ultimately. You're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to spin plates on a whole bunch of poles. No, you get a plate spinning on a pole, and you put a good plate spinner in charge of that pole and you move on. So you're not the one that has to come back and spin that plate. Hopefully that analogy makes sense to you. You're building systems, you're building workflows. You're constantly asking yourself, am I the only one that could be doing what I'm doing right now? If not, I need to take some of the profit from this system and put a good person in place, which isn't that hard to do. It's just not. Again, as an illustration, Kang has a $3 million replens business run by 2.5 people approximately and a good workflow software. Virtual assistant doesn't cost hardly anything, and you're changing their life, giving them great work. Okay, enough of that. I could rant all day on some of these things. Hopefully, I've given you some encouragement and inspiration in this arena. I want to talk about the underserved shelf space and why I think this trend is going to continue to explode for us as resellers. Hang with me on this logic here. Now, we've demonstrated in our group through my own account and Many others have said these strategies are working incredibly well for them, where you can sell above the buy box. You don't have to be focused on the buy box to make good, consistent sales on Amazon once you know what kind of ASINs you're looking for. An underserved ASIN to me is one where I don't care how many other sellers there are. I only care how many other FBA sellers there are who have sent inventory to Amazon's warehouses. I'm serving those customers who are saying, I want this item and I want it fast. I don't care what the price is. Not all sellers shop, not all shoppers shop that way, but many shoppers do. They get on Amazon and they sort by delivery date, delivery speed. They don't look at the price. Are you serving those customers? Odds are, if you haven't been through our above buy box training, you're not serving those customers. You're busy fighting, trying to win the buy box constantly. I think this opportunity is going to get even bigger as Amazon introduces faster and faster ways to get that last mile delivery super fast. Meaning, if you live in a major metropolitan area right now, there's a lot of stuff in Amazon's catalog you can get within, say, 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, and it's on your porch. That's phenomenal. I don't have to get in a car and go to three Walmarts to find this thing. You can just have it on my porch. Sure, I'm going to pay a couple more dollars, maybe. I don't care. I'm not even going to price shop at that point. I want speed. That's great. Speed and convenience. More and more people are being trained to shop that way. Amazon's speeds are increasing, which to me means there's more and more underserved shelf space. Hang with me on this logic. Here's the statement you need to understand. You may have to rewind and listen to me say this a few times for it to sink in, but this is a very insightful thing for you to absorb into your Amazon selling strategies. It will help you diversify, lower your risk portfolio, increase your profit margins. Okay, hang with me. Today on Amazon, as you're listening to this podcast since the time it started till now, millions of people have jumped on Amazon and paid far less than they were willing to get items delivered to them far slower than they wish they could get them. Did you follow that? Do you see where that opportunity opens up so many new ASINs for you if you can find them, and we teach you how to find them? Today on Amazon, I'll repeat it, millions of shoppers will spend far less than they were willing to on items that will arrive far slower than that shopper wishes they could receive them. Meaning, if a smart seller like you or me would have just put a unit or two of that product in a warehouse near that customer, making 2 to 4 hour delivery possible, they would have been very willing to pay for that item and pay a lot more for it. Millions of ASINs meet that description, meaning there's just not enough inventory with enough FBA sellers to meet the demand across Amazon's hundreds of warehouses. If you're not using that strategy, I'm not saying make that your sole strategy, but it does open up a whole bunch of test-worthy ASINs that you can send in a few units against, knowing your worst case scenario is if it doesn't sell after 45 to 60 days, drop your price, it's going to sell. Drop down into the buy box with all the other sellers, get a few transactions. Maybe you make a couple dollars, maybe you lose a couple dollars, but you're in the churn. You're earning Amazon's trust. You're getting ungated in new categories. You're enjoying the journey, seeing the wheels spin. It's a great way to ramp up your business. It's a great way to diversify. And I would argue it's a great lens that you can see the Amazon opportunity through. As Amazon introduces drones for delivery, you've heard about that, right? It's already in a couple cities and it's going to be in a whole lot more cities soon. Imagine seeing a drone flying over your house with somebody's Amazon order. 20-minute delivery times in some cases. Can you imagine placing an order for something and before you get up from your computer to go grab a cup of water, your box is sitting on your front porch just 20 minutes later after ordering it because some drone dropped it off? That opens up a whole lot of underserved shelf space. If you're hanging with me on my logic here, there's a lot of people who say, oh, wow, I can have this in 20 minutes. Yeah, I'll pay an extra $20 for that item. That's cool. It's going to drop to my front porch that fast. I don't care what the buy box is anymore. I want it 20 minutes from now, not next Tuesday. Do you see the opportunity? Amazon has 1 billion listings. More are being added constantly. More brands are being added constantly. If you can build a good workflow system, you can build a beautiful business. And that's just the beginning. The knowledge in your head, the relationships you're building open up so many doors of opportunity. So don't be negative. One of the things that can just undermine your reputation and your bank account is negativity. I shake my head sometimes when I see people publicly posting negativity. Find solutions. Be a relationship oriented person. If for no other reason, don't post negative garbage online. Build relationships. Reach out for help. Share the challenges you have, but offer assistance to others, offer encouragement to others, build your network. The number of people we've seen build great relationships in our community, coming to our events or just in our Facebook group because they have a positive air about them. They bring positivity and solutions. When something weird happens, they say, well, let's see how this plays out. Here's another final example. I think I'll wrap this episode up because I've gone a pretty long period of time here with this one, but I think it was an important episode. I mentioned earlier that we've seen probably 100 times at this point. People say, well, that's it. The game is over. Reselling is dead. In the past 20 years, I've seen it 100 times. I've also seen policy changes have the same effect. You get to decide how you're going to respond to policy changes. One of the recent ones, well, I mean, I'm not even going to give you examples because it happens every 2 to 3 months for the past 20 years. It's happened with eBay, with Walmart, it'll happen with Amazon, it's happened. People will say, well, yeah, Amazon was great. But then along came new policy, new fee, rule change, X, whatever. Game over. It's just not possible to make a profit anymore. Game over. I've seen it so many times. And I've said the same thing for the past 15, 18 years. And I've been right every single time. And it's this: who pays for all the fees in your business? It doesn't matter what business you run, the customer pays. If it's not profitable for you to run your business the way you're running it right now, you either go out of business or you raise your prices. So in this case, you need to find products that are profitable. If a rule or policy change at Amazon makes some of your catalog not profitable, you have a couple choices. You can go public and complain and tell everybody how evil Amazon is, or you can stop selling those items temporarily, check back with them later, and find other items that are profitable. You can pivot. You can expand your catalog. We see sellers doing it all day, every day around here. We have multiple sellers in our community who are finding 5, 10, 15, 20 new ASINs every day. And some of them die off every day, and some of them take fire every day. And they're just riding the wave of the winners, turning off the losers. It's a very unemotional thing. But if you're emotionally tied to certain segments of your business, if you're all in on Adidas, or if you're all in on that gray area bundle that you've built, yeah, you're going to have some rough days. And you might actually have to turn your business off at some point, unfortunately. I've seen some people make a whole lot of money and do really, really well for a few years, pay off their house, get some nice money in the bank, and then shut it all off because they went all in. I don't like to see that. I'd rather see you build something that's sustainable over the long term. And you do that by staying nimble, pivoting, learning constantly, testing new strategies, putting systems in place with good people managing those systems, listening to great content, hanging out in great communities like this where you can diversify, offering to solve other people's problems and getting paid well to do it, such as the brands that are frustrated on Amazon. There's so many great opportunities out there. So, this is my encouragement to you. Do not listen to the handful of people because bad news always floats. You do know this, right? Like if you watch national news every day, do you ever think to yourself, yeah, these are all the top 10 bad things that happened today? But the other 7.5 billion of us had a really great day today. We hung out with our families, loved on our kids, made some money at work or in our business, and nobody's reporting that. The same thing happens on Amazon every day. The 2 or 3 people in the community who had a really bad day, well, they're going to get on there and they're going to scream from the top of the mountain about the bad day they just had. Don't let that impact you. Keep in mind, you're sitting on top of the most rapidly expanding economic wave and change, paradigm shift in the way business is done in the busiest, most expansive and profitable sector of our economy, there's a lot of ways to pivot and do really, really well in this arena that we're in right now as e-commerce business building warriors. Hey, God bless you, business building warrior. I hope your 2025 is off to a great start. Thanks for hanging with me on this episode. It was a little mentally challenging at times. I waited till I was really clear on this. I made myself some good notes, and hopefully I made some sense as I went through this, and hopefully I addressed some of maybe the scenarios that you've been concerned with. But let's talk about it. Hop into our Facebook group. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Interact with us. Tell me where you think I'm wrong. Tell me what you'd like to hear a little bit more of. And there's a little tip if you didn't know, we go live every Monday. Typically, it's about 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Every Monday in our Facebook group, we post a Zoom link. It's the same link every week. And you can jump in, join us, listen in anonymously in the background. Don't even have to use your real name if you don't want to. Keep your camera off or turn your camera on. Let's chat. You can use the anonymous chat feature if you'd like. We won't even know who you are. Ask your questions. Come hang out with us. We love doing it every week. And we'd love to have you part of one of those. We love going through the basics of what our community has to offer the first 5 or 10 minutes. And then after that, it's just open Q&A, whatever topics are on your mind. Let's talk about your business, see if we can maybe help out. It's always a good time hanging out, getting into good conversations with others. That's every Monday. Be part of our Facebook group. You'll see it posted up in the featured announcements each week. Go to silentjimdotcom if you're not in our Facebook group yet. Jump in, completely free. Coming up on 80,000 members. Recently voted the top group for all Amazon sellers in the world. This podcast voted #1 as well. Our conference voted top reseller event. Pretty incredible. You're in the right group. We're here to encourage and inspire and equip you to build a beautiful business. Keep plugging away, keep growing, keep being creative. You're in the right community at the right time. We'll have another great episode for you very soon, Warrior. Thanks for joining me today.